Hi there, it's Rob from Octopus. Welcome to another Will It Deploy video where we try to automate the deployment of different technologies using Octopus Deploy. Today we're going to take a look at automating the deployment of a multi-tenant web app, deploying to AWS virtual machines running in their EC2 service. The app is a white-labeled software as a service web app that can be customized for different end customers. We need to be able to support customized features or modules for different customers, shared and dedicated hosting options, and unique environments for specific customers. Let's get started. This is the application we're trying to deploy, and it's called Random Quotes. It provides quotes as a service on demand whenever you click the big green refresh button. It's a familiar app we've seen in past videos. However, let's imagine it's doing really well and it's getting really popular. So we as the team building and marketing it have expanded to sell it to different customers. The app has grown organically and we've added support to load modules on demand and customize the styling for each customer depending on their needs. Random Quotes is now a multi-tenant SaaS application. We sold a copy of it to one customer, and then another, making updates along the way. We didn't plan for this, so when we add a new customer, we're actually customizing its app settings and styling, and deploying it as a separate application with a separate database. We try to keep our existing customers up to date, although each one has different needs. If you're not familiar with multi-tenant applications or multi-tenancy, it's an architectural approach in which a single application instance serves multiple customers, and each customer is called a tenant. Commonly, tenants can have customized features or modules, different styling requirements, different application settings, and even different hosting requirements. In our case, our application has grown organically, and we can imagine we've added features over time, and we didn't have time to re-architect it. So we actually deploy a separate copy of our web app and database for each customer. And then we need to customize the app settings and features based on our customers' details and what modules they have subscribed to. We've made some updates to support different tenants. The first one that's visible is the navigation bar or banner at the top. That and the company name here are now driven by app settings. So different styling and app settings are now customized per tenant. And so if we head over to the new About page, you can see company details that are driven by app settings and are different for each customer or tenant. I'd also like to point out that we have two modules, sharing and admin, and those are both loaded on demand at application startup based upon what a customer has subscribed or paid for. The sharing module is a way for users to share their favorite quotes that could be added to the site. And the admin module is a graphical way to view and manage all the quotes on the site. Now, this is an ASP.NET Core web application built on top of a SQL Server database using Entity Framework for its data access. If we head over to Visual Studio, we can see that our once simple application has been split up into multiple projects and it's getting a bit more complicated. So the standard web application is still quite similar. It still has a single controller and a handful of views. I'll point out that a few of our pages have been updated to inject our app settings, so we can customize things like company name and customer and styles for each tenant. Now, we also pushed all our common code, our model, our data access logic, etc., to a separate core application assembly, and we called that randomquotes.data. And within that, we've got all of our models, our data migrations, and our quote context. So that's our entity framework database context. The most interesting thing here is that we have our two new modules, and they're both separate assemblies with self-contained controllers and views. Each controller is primarily self-contained. It has its controller and views, but it also includes a reference to our data assembly, so it still has access to the database and any of our model objects. Each of our modules is built independently, But if their binaries are dropped into our modules folder with a container folder, admin, or sharing, then on application startup, they'll be scanned and added to our MVC application. And we also dynamically update our layout to add a link to those modules as well. And so everything just works together nicely. We've taken a quick look at the source code to enable the features of this application, but the full sample is available on GitHub, and there's a link in the description below. So the big question is, will it deploy? Yes, it will. Let's walk through the solution. I have an Octopus instance running, and you can see I have a single project and 3 environments, dev, test, and production. And you can also see that I've already done some deployments to all of these environments. And our dashboard even includes some information to see that, say in our production environment, the 4 out of 4 means that we have deployed to 4 tenants available in that environment. Before I continue, I'd like to give a short introduction to the building blocks involved in Octopus multi-tenant deployments. In Octopus, you generally create projects, define your deployment process, add variables, and then create releases and deploy them to targets running in your environments. You can promote releases between environments, and Octopus updates your configuration automatically. Tenants introduce another dimension. You connect your tenants to projects and the required environments. This allows you to deploy your projects to the same environment multiple times, but you can customize your deployment process, variables, and targets as needed. Variable templates allow you to create variable placeholders, which are specified by each tenant. This enables you to have tenant-specific values, like database connection strings, app settings, or styling. Tenant tags allow you to categorize and work with tenants in groups. This unlocks scenarios like deploying your latest release to early adopters, or deploying modules for only customers who have paid for them. This first-class support makes it easy to deploy safely and reliably. If we head over to our infrastructure, we already saw that we have dev, test, and production environments. So if we take a look at that, you can see we have 2 machines in production, 2 machines in test, and 1 machine in development. And each machine is tagged with a database and a web role. And what that means is that each server acts as a database server and a web server. And so that's quite common, say, for a dev or a test machine, but quite often other environments like staging or production, they are separated. For simplicity, we've kept them all together. I'd also like to point out that all of our deployment targets are tagged with a tenant hosting tag. You can see servers with shared and dedicated tags. Octopus allows us to specify if machines can be included in tenant deployments, excluded, or even mixed, that it can be used in both tenanted and untenanted deployments. We can further restrict machines to specific tenants, but also categorize or group them with tenant tag sets, like our hosting tags. We're utilizing this to ensure that customers who pay more get dedicated hardware, whereas customers who that matters less to can just utilize shared hardware. This gives us control and safety so that we only deploy to the machines or targets that we intend to. Tenant tag sets are defined in our library. Tag sets let you categorize and work with tenants in groups throughout Octopus. We already talked about the hosting tag set, whereby customers can just use shared infrastructure, or if they pay more, they could use dedicated hardware. But we also have a random quotes module tag set. This allows us to tag specific tenants and customize our deployment process to deploy specific modules that customers can subscribe or pay for, allowing us great customization. Tenant tags are completely dynamic. You can customize them to meet your needs and tailor your tenanted deployments for your projects and environments. If we take a look at our tenants page, we can see what a tenant looks like in Octopus. We have 4 customers and 1 test tenant, and we have a test tenant just so that we can test customer-specific features. Our tenant dashboard graphically shows you all your tenants at a glance. But if you look at these little colored squares, they show you your tenant tags. So again, at a glance, you can see what customers are using what features and additional properties like hosting, etc. If we select one of our customers or tenants, we can see the project's environments and other properties that they're associated with. The first thing that we can see is that Copywriters United is associated with our random quotes project and our test and production environments. That means we can deploy random quotes for Copywriters United to the test environment for testing to make sure that everything looks good for them, and the live production environment. And if we look at our tag sets here on the right, you can see that they're using shared hosting or shared infrastructure. And you can also see that they subscribe or pay for the admin and sharing modules. So they'll get the full experience, which is great. The other key information related to a tenant is their tenant variable values. There's two kinds of variables that are defined for a tenant. The first is common variables, and these are common values that are defined once per tenant. And they're normally things like an alias or company-specific details, contact details, etc. Even styles. These are things that do not change per environment. Then there are project variables. Project variables are values that change per environment. So for random quotes for this tenant, we can see they're linked to test and production. And if we take a look, you can see variables like website port and name and database connection details. You can also see that we use conventions here. This is utilized to reduce the number of variables that you have to specify per project, per tenant. So if you have some conventions and you build up your variables nicely, you can save a lot of time. Now let's take a look at the random quotes project. This is our project dashboard, and because we're working with tenants, we can see which releases have been deployed to which environments for all of our tenants, just at a glance, and it's very, very handy. If we take a look at our deployment process, we can see that it's quite simple. We're only doing a few things here. The first two steps are related to deploying our database. The first step is an Octopus package step that just gets the package containing our database update script to the target server. And the second step is an Octopus community contributed step to execute that SQL script against our database. If we take a look at it, it's very simple. We just provide our connection string via a variable and the location of the script, again using a variable. If we take a look at the next step, that is to deploy our website. And this again is quite straightforward. We specify the package that we're deploying that contains our web app, and we specify that it's an IIS website. We specify the website name, the application pool details, the bindings, and the authentication. But the key bit here is that we're using tenant variables throughout this process. We have JSON configuration variable replacement turned on, and so that is also utilizing those tenant variables to update our application settings specific to the tenant or customer. The next two steps allow us to deploy tenant-specific modules, and we're utilizing tenant tags. So you can see deploy admin module and deploy sharing module. They're only executed for tenants with the appropriate tenant tag. So if we take a look at one of these steps, you can see we specify the package that we're going to deploy, and then we have a custom script. And what that's doing is we copy our package to the modules path within our website, and then we just recycle our app pool. So that's a little bit of PowerShell just to copy that file and reset the IIS app pool. Now let's take a look at variables. Variables are at the heart of Octopus projects and multi-tenant deployments. They enable tenant or customer-specific configuration details. Octopus has rich support for defining variables and automatically updating them during your deployments. First, we have project variables which define standard configuration values that can be substituted during deployments. Projects also include support for variable templates, whose values are required for each tenant connected to a project. This allows tenants to provide different variable values for each project and environment combination. Common examples are database connection details and host names. Second, we can also define common variables across multiple projects. These are defined in library variable sets and are a great way to eliminate duplicate data entry. Variable sets similarly include support for common variable templates, whose values are also required by connected tenants. However, these values are only specified once per tenant, and common examples include customer contact details or tenant styles and colors. So these are our project variables, and we're updating our JSON app settings with a combination of Octopus system variables, but primarily tenant-specific values. We're using a combination of project variable templates and common templates. Our project variable templates are specified per environment, and you can see the mainly environment-specific details like database connection details and website details. Whereas our common variable templates are standard tenant details, and these are values that are constant across all environments. So they only need to be specified once per tenant. And you can see their company details and some styling details, the company color. We also include tenant alias, which is just an abbreviation of the tenant name, which is useful in other variables. As I mentioned earlier, common variable templates are defined in library variable sets. And so the standard tenant details are included because I've added that variable set to this project. Now let's see everything in action. Let's create some releases and do some deployments. We've had some feedback from some of our customers who've subscribed to our sharing module. Our confirmation page wasn't very clear, so we made some improvements and we'd now like to create a release and deploy to all those customers. So I'm going to go ahead and create a release, and I'll take a look at our packages. You can see that our sharing modules version has been bumped. So I'm just going to click save there, and yes, I want to deploy to development. That's so I can verify the changes first before I go through to test and production. Now on my deployment configuration screen, I'm going to select tenanted deployment. And I'm selecting include all applicable tenants because I know that only my test tenant is connected to the development environment. So I can safely deploy to development and test it in the context of a tenant. So that worked great. Now let's take a look at our test website. I'll just select our test tenant running in development. And the first thing that we can see is that our web page is running in the context of a tenant. We can see that our top banner has changed color, and we also have a test company name on the landing page. The other thing to point out is that we can see version 1.04 is running in development, so our app settings have been updated as well. If we head over to the sharing module, I'm going to enter just a test quote and share it to see if the confirmation page has been updated. So I'll just say this is a test, author, tester. My name is Rob and rob@tester.com. I'll go ahead and share that. So now we can see this part of the message is a bit more clear. We'll send you an email if we add it to our site. So that has been updated as we expected, so the deployment was successful. So now I'm confident to go ahead and deploy to test. So this time I'm still going to do a tenanted deployment, but I only want to deploy to the tenants with the sharing module tag. I can see which tenants this affects in two different ways. The easiest is just to click Tenant Preview, and I can customize this further if I wanted. So I can see there's 3 tenants, including my test tenant. So it'll go to Copywriters United and Dictionary Printers as well, so that I can then test those websites directly and deploy to production if I'm happy as well. So with that in mind, I'm just going to click Deploy. So we can now see that it's deploying to all of those tenants in parallel. So we can see that all of our deployments were successful. Now let's take a quick look at Copywriters United and Dictionary Printers. So I'll just load up Copywriters United in test, and at the same time I'll do the same thing for Dictionary Printers. Now again, you can see that our styling has been updated and the app settings version 1.4.0.4 is running in test. And if I go to Dictionary Printers, same thing, styling is updated, specific for my tenant and my app setting as well. Now I can go ahead and test the changes, and if everything looks good, promote to production. This shows the power of tenanted deployments and tenant tags. I quickly and easily deployed a release to a group of tenants and promoted that release through environments. Each website customized with customer-specific settings and styles, deployed safely and reliably. Now I'd like to do another deployment for another customer. International Quotes, who's our largest customer, they currently subscribe to the admin module, but they've requested access to the sharing module so they could test it. Now the interesting thing about International Quotes is they're a large customer and they have dedicated hardware. So I'm going to go ahead, edit the tags and add the sharing module. There we go. Now I'm going to jump back to our project. International Quotes is all about stability. They're a large customer, they have dedicated hardware, and they want stability. So I'm not going to deploy our latest release. I'm just going to redeploy the existing release with the updated tenant tags. So I've gone into the deployment for release 1.0.3, and I'm going to select deploy to. Now here, I'm going to select the test environment. Now I'm going to select a tenanted deployment, and I'm deploying to a specific customer. So right now I don't have too many tenants, but if I did, I could just filter, go down to International Quotes. So I've selected my tenant, and I do want to make sure I get my dedicated hardware as well. So I'll select that as well. Now, based upon that, if I check my tenant preview, I know only one tenant matches, and that's International Quotes, which is exactly what I want. So now I'll just click deploy. So our deployment was successful. Now, if we open up the website, we can just verify that that deployed successfully. And there we go. We can see the colors match our tenant's logo and everything looks good. There we go. So we can see that the colors are updated successfully. They match our tenant, and we can see that version 1.03 is running in test. The other thing that we can see is that we have both the admin and sharing module. So we'd go ahead and contact International Quotes. We would let them test in this dedicated environment, see what their feedback is, see if they're happy, and if they are, we can then promote to production. Octopus makes complex multi-tenant deployments easy. Managing customer-specific settings and deployments can be hard and error-prone, but that's a thing of the past. Octopus enables you to customize your tenant or customer-specific settings and deploy based on your needs, safely and reliably. Thanks for watching. Links for all the resources used in this video are in the description below, including a link to start a free 45-day trial of Octopus Deploy. If you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel as we're adding new videos weekly. Happy deployments!